I had been looking forward to this moment for 3 weeks straight. 3 long weeks in Seattle, overseeing a construction project that demanded my attention 16 hours a day. The job was done, the client was happy, and all I wanted was to get back home to Angela. I remember gripping that steering wheel during the 3-hour drive from Seattle to Portland, imagining her smile when I walked through the door. I pictured us cooking dinner together, laughing about how much we had missed each other. But when I pulled into our driveway that Thursday evening around 7, something felt off. The house was completely dark. Every single light was out, which was strange because Angela usually got home from work by 6. I grabbed my duffel bag from the trunk and walked up to the front door, fishing my keys from my pocket. That is when everything changed. My key would not turn in the lock. Before we continue, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below, and do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you will want to see how this unfolds. Now, let me tell you what happened when I realized my own wife had locked me out of my own home. I stood there on my own front porch trying my key again and again. I jiggled it, pulled it out, checked to make sure it was the right key, and tried once more. Nothing. The lock had been changed. My heart started racing. I knocked on the door softly at first, then louder. No answer. I called Angela's phone. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I walked around to the back door hoping maybe she was in the yard or had her headphones on. The back door was locked too, and when I tried to peer through the windows, the curtains were drawn tight. Every window I checked was locked. I felt this rising panic in my chest, the kind you get when nothing makes sense, and your brain is scrambling for explanations. That is when I saw Mrs. Patterson, our 70-year-old neighbor, walking her small terrier down the sidewalk. She glanced at me, and her expression changed immediately. Her eyes went soft with pity, and she slowed her pace as she approached. "Trevor, honey," she said in that gentle voice people use when they are about to deliver bad news. "I am so sorry about what happened. Angela told me everything." I stared at her, my mind completely blank. Everything. What everything I opened my mouth to ask, but Mrs. Patterson just shook her head sadly and kept walking her little dog trotting beside her. I stood there in my own yard, feeling like I had walked into someone else's life by mistake. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text message from Angela. Finally. But as I read it, my confusion turned into something much worse. The message was long, and every word felt like a punch. She wrote that she had discovered I was having an affair with a woman in Seattle. She said she had found messages on my laptop that I had forgotten at home. She said there were photos of me with this woman on Facebook. She mentioned a hotel receipt for a romantic suite instead of the single room I had told her about. She wrote, "You found someone better, Trevor. I hope she makes you happy. Do not contact me. My lawyer will reach out." I must have read that message 10 times, standing there in the dark, trying to make sense of it. An affair, with who I racked my brain going through every single interaction I had in Seattle. Then it hit me. Sarah Jenkins, my 55-year-old colleague, who had flown up to Seattle to help with the structural review. Sarah, who had been married to her husband David for 30 years and had 2 grown children, we had grabbed coffee twice to go over blueprints. Someone must have taken a photo. But how could Angela possibly think there was anything romantic between us? And the romantic suite at the hotel I remembered now. The front desk had upgraded me because they had overbooked the standard rooms. I had been so exhausted from work that I barely noticed. I just threw my stuff down and passed out on the bed each night. The messages on my laptop must have been work emails between Sarah and me discussing the project timeline. Everything Angela thought she found had a completely innocent explanation, but she had not asked me. She had not given me a single chance to explain. She had just changed the locks and shut me out. I tried calling her again. The call did not even ring this time. She had blocked my number. I called her mother Linda, who had always been kind to me. She picked up, but the moment she heard my voice, she said, "I have nothing to say to you," and hung up. I tried Angela's younger sister Jessica, who I had always gotten along with. She answered, and before I could get 3 words out, she cut me off. "I cannot believe you did this to my sister Trevor." After everything she has done for you, you are disgusting." The line went dead. Everyone in her family believed I had cheated. Angela had told them all, and now I was the villain in a story that was not even true. I got back in my car because I had nowhere else to go. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, just staring at the dark house that I had helped pay for, that had my furniture inside, that held 7 years of my life with Angela. Then I started the engine and drove to my best friend Marcus's apartment across town. Marcus was a 32-year-old IT engineer who lived alone in a small 2-bedroom place in the Pearl District. When he opened his door and saw my face, he did not ask questions. He just stepped aside and said, "Come in, man." I told him everything while sitting on his couch, my duffel bag still by the door. Marcus listened, his expression growing angrier with each detail. "This is insane," he kept saying. "You need to fix this." But how Angela would not talk to me. Her whole family had turned against me. I had no way to prove my innocence, because in her mind she already had all the proof she needed. That night, I barely slept. I lay on Marcus's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 3 weeks. Had I missed something? Had Angela been pulling away, and I had not noticed? I read her text message over and over, analyzing every word, trying to understand how this had happened. The worst part was not just being accused of something I did not do. It was the realization that the woman I had loved and trusted for 7 years had not trusted me enough to even have a conversation. She had seen some circumstantial evidence and immediately assumed the worst. No phone call, no confrontation, just changed locks and a cold text message. I felt betrayed in a way I could not fully articulate. I was the victim here, but somehow I was being treated like the criminal. When morning came, I called in sick to work. I could not focus on anything except clearing my name. My first call was to Sarah. I reached her on her work cell, and she sounded surprised to hear from me. "Trevor, is everything okay? You sound terrible." I explained the situation, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Sarah said something that made my blood run cold. "Trevor, David got a message too. Someone sent him photos of us at that coffee shop, and the angle made it look like we were being intimate. We almost split up over it." He was furious. My hands started shaking. Someone had deliberately sent those photos to both Angela and David. This was not a misunderstanding. This was sabotage. Sarah told me that she and David had worked through it after she showed him all our work emails and conference schedules. They had realized the photos were taken out of context, possibly even edited to look worse than they were. But the damage had almost been done. "Whoever did this wanted to destroy both our marriages," Sarah said, her voice tight with anger. "Do you have any idea who would do something like that?" I did not. Not yet. But I was going to find out. I spent the next few hours thinking about who might benefit from my marriage falling apart. Then something clicked in my memory. About 2 months ago, Angela had mentioned running into an old friend named Kyle at a networking event. Kyle had been her boyfriend in college years before she met me. She had said he was doing really well for himself, now working as a real estate agent, driving a nice car, living in a fancy condo downtown. I had not thought much of it at the time. Angela and I were solid, or so I thought. But now I wondered. Had Kyle stayed in touch with her while I was in Seattle? Marcus helped me check Angela's Facebook page, since she had blocked me on everything. We scrolled through her posts from the past 3 weeks. There were 5 different photos of her at upscale restaurants around Portland. Each photo was carefully cropped, but in the background or edge of every single one you could see part of another person. A man's hand holding a wine glass, the shoulder of a suit jacket, a blurry male figure at the edge of the frame. The comments on these photos were telling. Her friends kept asking, "Who are you with?" and "Who is the lucky guy?" Angela had not responded to any of those comments. She had just left them hanging there. My stomach twisted. While I had been working 80-hour weeks in Seattle thinking about her every night, she had been going to fancy dinners with someone else, and based on the timeline that someone was probably Kyle. By the 3rd day, I had made a decision. That house was legally mine too. My name was on the mortgage. I had just as much right to be there as Angela did. I drove over at noon knowing she would be at work. There was a locksmith's van parked in the driveway, and a guy in his 30s was working on the front door. I approached him and explained the situation, showing him my driver's license with the address, the mortgage papers I had grabbed from my car, and the deed that listed both Angela and me as owners. The locksmith looked uncomfortable. "Look, man, I am just doing a job. Lady called me this morning and said she needed another lock change." Another lock change. How many times had she changed them? The locksmith hesitated clearly, caught in the middle of something messy. But legally, I had every right to enter my own property. He finally nodded and opened the door for me. Walking into that house felt surreal. Everything looked the same, but everything felt different. The couch where Angela and I used to watch movies together. The kitchen table where we had eaten breakfast every morning for years. The photos on the walls of our wedding day, our vacations, our life together. But then I noticed things that did not belong. There was a pair of men's dress shoes by the front door, size 11. I wore size 10. There was a gray North Face jacket hanging on the coat rack that was not mine. I walked into the living room and caught a whiff of cologne. It was expensive, smelling woody and strong, not the kind I wore. I followed the scent upstairs to our bedroom, my heart pounding harder with each step. The bedroom looked mostly normal, but the smell of that cologne was stronger here. I checked the closet. There, pushed to one side, was a men's button-down shirt that was not mine. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos of everything. The shoes, the jacket, the shirt. This was evidence. Someone had been staying here, living here in my house, in my space. I went back downstairs and opened Angela's laptop, which was sitting on the kitchen counter. She was still logged in. I knew this was probably crossing a line, but at this point I needed answers. I checked her browser history. The searches from the past week made my heart sink. How to file for divorce quickly in Oregon. What happens to assets in a divorce? Dating after marriage ends. She had been planning this for a while. This was not a spontaneous reaction to fake evidence. She had wanted out, and someone had given her the excuse she needed. I sat down at the kitchen table trying to process everything. Angela was having an affair. That much was clear now. Kyle had orchestrated the whole thing, with the fake photos of Sarah and me giving Angela justification to kick me out and play the victim. She got to keep the house temporarily, got sympathy from her family and friends, and had Kyle waiting in the wings. It was calculated. It was cruel, and I was not going to let them get away with it. I called a lawyer that David had recommended, a sharp woman named Patricia Morales, who specialized in family law. I explained everything, sent her the photos I had taken, and she agreed to meet with me that evening. "Do not leave that house," she advised. "You have every legal right to be there. If she calls the police, you show them your documentation. You have done nothing wrong." So I stayed. I sat on that couch and waited for Angela to come home. Around 6 in the evening, I heard the front door open. Angela walked in, and she was not alone. Kyle was right behind her. They were laughing about something, and then they both froze when they saw me sitting there. The color drained from Angela's face. Kyle's expression went from shocked to angry in about 2 seconds. "What are you doing here?" Angela demanded, her voice rising. I changed the locks. I stayed calm, which was hard, because every part of me wanted to yell, "This is my house too, Angela. I had every legal right to enter." The locksmith confirmed that. Kyle stepped forward like he was going to do something, puffing out his chest. "Dude, just leave. You have done enough damage." I looked at him, looked at him, and I could see it. The guilt, the nervousness behind the bravado. "Damage," I said slowly. "What damage exactly?" Angela jumped in, trying to hold on to the narrative she had built. "You cheated on me with that woman in Seattle. Sarah." I saw the photos. I saw the hotel bill. I pulled out my phone. "Okay. Let me clear that up right now." I dialed Sarah on video call. She answered immediately, and David was sitting right next to her on their couch. They both waved at the camera. "Hey, Trevor," Sarah said. "Hi, Angela. I understand there has been some confusion." I turned the phone so Angela and Kyle could see the screen clearly. Sarah explained calmly and clearly that she and I had worked together on the Seattle project, that we had met for coffee twice to review blueprints. that the photos someone had sent were taken out of context and possibly edited. David spoke up. My wife and I almost divorced because of those fake photos. Someone photoshopped them to make them look like something they were not. We figured it out, though, and we figured out who sent them. Angela looked like she had been slapped. Her eyes darted between the screen and Kyle, confusion washing over her face. Kyle had gone very pale. "This is ridiculous," he stammered. "This does not prove anything." I ended the call and thanked Sarah and David. Then I pulled up the photos I had taken earlier on my phone. "Want to explain these, Angela?" The men's shoes by the door, the jacket, the cologne all over our bedroom. She could not speak. She just stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water. Kyle tried to recover. "This is just circumstantial. You are grasping at straws." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Actually, I installed a security camera before I left for Seattle. For safety, you know. Let me pull up the footage." I had not actually installed a camera, but I needed to see Kyle's reaction. And there it was. Pure panic flooded his face. "Angela, we should go," he said quickly, grabbing her arm. "We do not have to listen to this." But Angela pulled away from him. She looked at me then, at Kyle, then back at me. "You are lying," she said, but her voice shook. "There is no camera." I shrugged. "Want to take that chance?" She broke. Right there in our living room, Angela started crying, and the truth came spilling out. She admitted that she had reconnected with Kyle 2 months before I went to Seattle, that he had told her about his successful real estate career, his luxury condo, his expensive car, that he had suggested she deserved better than a construction engineer who was always working. When I left for Seattle, Kyle had seen an opportunity. He had hired someone to edit the photos of Sarah and me to make them look romantic. He had sent them anonymously to Angela. He had even booked that romantic suite at the hotel under my name, somehow creating false evidence. The plan was simple: make Angela believe I was cheating so she would divorce me quickly and without guilt. Then Kyle could swoop in, be the hero, and eventually benefit from half of our assets when the house sold in the divorce. Angela kept crying, saying Kyle had convinced her it was all true, that he had shown her so much evidence she did not think to question it. I looked at Kyle, who was now backing toward the door. "You forged documents. You photoshopped images. You committed fraud and defamation. You tried to destroy my marriage for what? So you could get your college girlfriend back." Kyle's face twisted. "You cannot prove anything," he said, but his voice cracked. "Actually," I said calmly, "I can. My lawyer is very interested in this case. And by the way, I called the police about 20 minutes ago. I reported identity theft and fraud. They should be here any minute." That was not entirely true either, but I was done playing fair with someone who had tried to ruin my life. Kyle bolted for the door, but I stepped in front of him. "You are not going anywhere." Angela grabbed my arm. "Trevor, please. I am so sorry. Kyle manipulated me. I should have trusted you. Can we fix this? Can we try again?" I looked at the woman I had loved for 7 years, the woman I had thought I would spend my life with, and all I felt was emptiness. "You changed the locks on our home, Angela. You kicked me out without a conversation. You told your entire family I was a cheater without a shred of real proof. You believed a man you dated for 6 months in college over your husband of 7 years. Tears streamed down her face. I know I messed up. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling." I shook my head. "No, we cannot. I am filing for divorce, and I am pressing charges against Kyle for fraud, defamation, and identity theft. You can decide if you want to be a witness or an accomplice." Kyle made one last attempt to get past me, but I was bigger and angrier. I held my ground until we heard sirens outside. I had actually called the police from Patricia's office earlier, after she had advised me on the legal steps to take. 2 officers came to the door, and I explained the situation, showing them all the evidence I had gathered: text messages, photos, the browser history, statements from Sarah and David. Kyle tried to argue, but the officers were not interested in his excuses. They took both him and Angela down to the station for questioning. I watched them leave, standing in the doorway of the house that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. 4 days after I first could not get my key to work in that lock, everything had changed. Kyle was facing criminal charges for fraud and identity theft. His real estate company had fired him immediately when the story came out. Turns out forging documents and destroying people's lives is bad for business. Angela had tried to contact me at least a dozen times, but I refused to engage with her directly. All communication went through Patricia, my lawyer. The divorce proceedings moved quickly because Angela did not have a leg to stand on. She could not claim I had been unfaithful. She could not claim abuse or abandonment. She had nothing except her own bad judgment and misplaced trust in a conman. Patricia managed to negotiate terms that were favorable to me. I kept the house. Angela had to buy out my half of her car since we had paid for it jointly. She did not fight me on anything. I think she was too ashamed. Her mother and sister both called me to apologize once the truth came out. Linda cried on the phone, saying she should have known I would never do something like that. Jessica sent me a long text, explaining how sorry she was for not giving me the benefit of the doubt. I accepted their apologies because holding on to anger would only hurt me. But I made it clear that our relationship would never be the same. Trust once broken that thoroughly does not just heal with a few sorry words. I requested a transfer to our Portland office permanently. No more long trips to Seattle or anywhere else. I wanted to be grounded to rebuild my life in a place that felt stable. My boss understood and approved it immediately. I spent my free time working out at a gym near my house. I started reading again, something I had not done in years. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with. Marcus and I hung out at least twice a week playing video games or just talking. Sarah and David became good friends too. We had been through something unique together, and that bond mattered. I repainted the bedroom, changed the furniture, bought new curtains. I erased every trace of Angela from that house and made it mine. It felt good. It felt like starting over. There were nights when I would sit on the back porch with a beer and think about what had happened. How close I had come to losing everything because of lies and manipulation. But I had not lost. I had fought back. I had stood up for myself. I had demanded the truth and refused to be a victim. One Saturday afternoon, I was at the hardware store picking up supplies for a small renovation project, and I ran into Mrs. Patterson. She smiled when she saw me, a genuine warm smile. "Trevor," she said, "you look good. Really good. I am glad you are doing okay." I thanked her. She hesitated, then added, "I am sorry I did not question what Angela told me that night. I should have known better." I told her it was not her fault. She had only known what she had been told. But I appreciated the apology. These small moments of people acknowledging what had happened, they helped. They reminded me that I was not crazy, that what Angela and Kyle had done was wrong, and people could see that now. The legal case against Kyle took a few months to work through the system, but eventually he pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for probation and restitution. He had to pay for Sarah's legal fees, my legal fees, and a fine to the state. His career in real estate was over. His reputation was destroyed. I did not take pleasure in his downfall exactly, but I did feel a sense of justice. Actions have consequences. You cannot just destroy people's lives and walk away clean. As for Angela, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved back in with her parents. She was in therapy, trying to work through what she had done. Part of me felt bad for her. She had been manipulated by someone she thought she could trust, but she had also made a choice to believe the worst about me without even asking my side of the story. That was on her. I hoped she learned from it. I hoped she became a better person because of it. But that was not my concern anymore. I started dating again about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Nothing serious at first, just casual coffee dates and dinners. It felt strange to be back in that world after being with someone for so long. But it also felt freeing. I could choose differently this time. I could look for someone who valued communication, who would come to me with concerns instead of locking me out. Someone who trusted me. I realized that the biggest lesson from all of this was not about Angela or Kyle or even the lies. It was about me. I learned that I deserved to be trusted. I learned that I could stand up for myself even when everyone else believed the worst. I learned that truth even when it takes time to surface, always comes out eventually. Sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. That is a hard truth. But that pain does not define you. Your response to it does. I chose to stand up for myself, to fight for the truth, and to walk away with my dignity intact. I chose not to become bitter or cynical. I chose to believe that most people are good and that one bad experience does not mean all relationships are doomed. And you know what? 4 days changed everything. But it was not the 4 days Angela thought. It was the 4 days I took to reclaim my life. So I want to hear from you. Have you ever been falsely accused of something? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with anyone who might need to hear it, anyone who is going through something similar and needs to know they are not alone. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, your truth is worth fighting for. Take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you in the next one.